So we are back with uh, George Tate Edwards again, and this is one huge answer. So I'll try to get through this as quick as possible. But the topic is about what are some major Chinese innovations that most people are not aware of, and this is going to be a long one. I will try to keep this as brief as possible and get through it as quick as possible. Okay. So let's begin. So he talks about like another answer there for a bit, but that's like the when asked like what are some major Chinese innovations, so it's like the cliche answer. So we're gonna look into something a bit more interesting and not well known. Uh, from his viewpoint, there appear to be two insufficiently recognized advances which the Chinese civilization made during the heydays of the Song and Ming empires, and which need to be reinterpreted and more fully acknowledged by the West. So these two, innovations have an enormous impact on world history, uh, and we have it listed here. The advance in economic understanding by the first investment credit economists, the transcendental Wang and Shi. Uh, so 1021 to 1086, who created many aspects of the welfare state in the northern Song Empire, 960 to 1127, where he was chancellor then, prime minister, and a personal friend of Emperor Shenzong. Okay, and you got this page here. It's kind of limited, to be honest. And transcendental in this context just means like if you look it up, it says yeah, yeah, not very good. But transcendental in this context means he is beyond. He has understanding beyond, for that time, beyond what anyone in that field had, basically. So basically, the best in the world. Uh, and then we have the improved design of this Zheng Great Fleet, which he illustrates below. It was funded in the Ming Empire using Wang and Shi's investment credit creation understanding, and had a positive effect on Chinese GDP in the Song Empire, and on the design of the European ships, which made voyages of discovery, exploration, and colonization of America. So I didn't know that before. Now I do. And I mentioned that investment credit creation was indeed a pretty ancient innovation in economics, and it was made by Wang and Shi in the Song Empire. The historical importance of the Chinese master economist Wang Anshi is partially recognized in the entries made in Wikipedia and in the Encyclopedia Britannica. So I haven't checked the Encyclopedia one, but I have checked the Wikipedia one, and it's like it's a good basic introduction, I guess, and in many other academic articles. Wang Anshi's significance in the creation of a competent Chinese bureaucracy has been discussed in recent academic articles, such as Wolfgang Grissler's three articles published in Public Money and Management about public management in the Northern Song Dynasty, which are. So I got the links there. I'll have a link to this article in the description. Um, And moving on, but while Wang Anshi is recognized as a great innovative economist, he used his power to limit the exploitation of the poor by the rich and establishing the first rudimentary welfare state in the southern Song Empire by establishing a basic income for the unemployed and the old, and hospitals for the poor and homes for orphans. The modern Western recorders of these actions list what he did but fail to understand how he did it. So we're going to go into that now. So he was, of course, the first investment credit economist. Um, the issue which modern interpreters fail to understand in the actions of Wang and Xi is the creation of no-cost credit creation by the central monetary authority in the northern Song Empire. That investment credit creation was the basic driver of the emergence of the Northern Song Empire as the first high investment, high growth, widespread prosperity industrial economy in the world. Uh, and if you have Cora, check out his Why Western Trained University Economists Are Almost Completely Useless, and that's really talking about neoliberal economists. So moving on. So here we have an example when the super strong graphene was discovered in 2004. Some scientists thought that it did not exist in nature because it seems such a peculiar arrangement of carbon atoms. Then more insightful scientists examined the carbon residues at the chimney edges of steel furnaces and noted that graphene was there, as it had been for hundreds of years. But they could not have previously noted it was there because previous to its discovery they did not know it existed. And even if they found it, they would not have recognized what they were looking at. Everyone understands their perceptions through the lens of their existing education and their knowledge. If they do not think that the procedure, like high growth, no cost investment creation exists, then they will be incapable of noticing it. That is why the Wikipedia and Encyclopedia Britannica entries about Wang and Xi are not adequately informed. Their authors do not have mindsets that encompass the possibility of investment creation. Because they do not recognize that principle, they cannot understand the higher economic growth and more social and cultural development of the Song and Ming empires. And so when people have this gap in knowledge, they fill it up with what other an explanation of their own, or basically some other nonsense like neoliberalism or something like that, like free market crap. That's what people nowadays do. Uh, Especially when they look at the Chinese economy, they're puzzled like how can China grow so fast and stuff. And neoliberals love taking credit for China's growth. But yeah, they do that because the average person does that because there's a huge gap in their knowledge, and they don't really question they don't question the established knowledge of their time, basically. That's also why most Western comments about China are entirely wrong. Even economists of the CIA seem incapable of reading the public debt financial data about Japan and China the right way up. That's why they can't perform basic accounting correctly and can't tell a bank liability like a bill from an asset like a mortgage. And they do not seem to be keen on having their understanding improved. So that's ego there. Nothing we can really do about that. Wherever Milton Friedman looked, he thought he saw the triumph of Western neoliberalism. As in such books as Capitalism and Freedom, and when Francis Fukuyama, we all know that guy, believed in the triumph everywhere of Western liberal values and wrote The End of History in the Last Man. The One of the reasons why that is such a dumb title, The End of History in the Last Man, is because there is no end of history. As long as humans exist, for us there's no absolutes. There's no end of history. Like we could find the current best economic system is investment creation, but that doesn't mean we couldn't find like an improved version or something that's different but much better than it. Like right now we don't have something like that, but we have improved versions of it, but we don't have like a superior system altogether. But it doesn't mean in the future we won't have that. You can't have this absolutist mindset when it comes to history. because it's never ending basically. The problem with his mindset and his conclusions were not supported by the reality of the world. The pre-existing beams in the eyes of these authors loomed larger in their minds than their unobserved realities of the world. So their works are dated and now largely invalid. So yeah, they became outdated big time. Uh, I don't know when Capitalism Freedom was released, and to be honest, I'm not too interested in finding out. But yeah, so he has explained the concept of the mandate of heaven. Some of you may have heard of it. Nearly all modern economies have become, through the passage of time, captured by, dominated by, and run for the benefit of the rich and privileged. Yet truly outstanding economies and nearly all world-dominating countries have grown to greatness through the inclusion of nearly all their people in the process of economic development. The Chinese appear to understand this issue, and 5,000 years of Chinese history illustrates that. When the empire is ruled in the interest of all its people, the emperor is obeying the mandate of heaven, and the empire is much greater, culturally, economically, socially, innovatively, due to that. So he goes into the mandate of heaven a bit more here. Previously, world-dominating hegemonic nations can be turned into much lesser powers culturally, economically, blah blah blah, by politicians running their economies only in the interests of their rich elites. This is not a theory, but an explanation of what has happened to the UK and USA. So, two former high-performing economies who are now basically in the pits of despair. The UK had a very interesting local banking system during the Industrial Revolution. It's what fueled the economic surge back then, and it's what fueled the Industrial Revolution really. And the USA used investment credit creation during World War II. So under FDR, they used that to get out of the Great Depression and build the vast manufacturing capabilities for the war, basically, which they used to sell to the powers that be then. And we're going a bit into what happened to those nations there. The previous hegemonic leading nations of the UK and the USA have been converted into minor states by political leaders elevating the rich above their people. So it's a funneling of wealth from the people to the top, when it should be the opposite. It's like turning two cultural billionaires which had massive innovative economic and social talents in their people into much more minor players on the world stage. The rich everywhere press for the economy to serve mainly their interests, to grant taxes and higher profits from the impoverishment of the workers. Where this comes to pass, the country loses its previous prominence. So that talks a bit of class or warfare. You guys, if you live in a Western country, you'll be feeling the effects of that if you're a working class person. So you should know very well by now. Wang Angshi's effects on three Chinese dynasties. So the first two are like the Song Empire, and the first Ming dynasty became the greatest in the world during the 11th to the 14th centuries, culturally, economically, socially, and innovatively. So he was chancellor and then was prime minister, and he operated, using that power, he operated investment credit creation under the emperor Zheng of the northern Song dynasty. So this is like one of those time periods I really would love to, like, if I could time travel, I'd really love to go back to that time and like experience what it was like back then. The Chinese used that key to establish prosperity in these three empires, all of which were operated in the interest of all their people. While the intervening Mongol Empire did not understand the mandate of heaven and ruled China in the interests of the Mongols. So their rule was for less than a century. Yuan Empire, having no interest in investment credit creation for the Chinese people, created vast amounts of consumption credit for the Mongols, which caused massive inflation and widespread discontent, which was one major factor in ending their empire. Wang Anshi's Microeconomics and the Mandate of Heaven. Wang Anshi continually acted to ensure the prosperity of all the Chinese people. So Susan Elizabeth Edmonds' 1994 research paper, a bit of it actually. Although Wang's character is hard to evaluate at such a distance, evidence of his moral fiber can be found in Mei Yao Chen's poem "Sing of Wang Jifu Wang Anshi" on his departure to become perfect of piling. All right, written in 1057 AD. This five-syllable gushi, which is an ancient style poem, describes prefects as people lacking in humanity who exploited the peasants. Coming from a family of humble, non-aristocratic means, Wang's desire for political and economic change shaped his life and career. On the occasion of his promotion, May suggests that Wang would be a different kind of prefect because he did not value silver and silk, but instead had an unusual compassion for the impoverished peasants. In May's experience, Wang was a man who put his concern for others above personal benefit and comfort. In this respect, he was uncommon because he never followed the world's fashions. I don't know why that's put in quotation marks there. But May's opinion is relevant and useful to include in the analysis of Wang's character. And the following excerpt comes from this poem, from his poem. Okay. I would like to read that poem actually. I think this is just a bit of it. But you aren't like this at all. Your horse has a leather bridle and mud guards black with dirt. Proceeding slowly, you inquire about local customs. Full of humility, you ride an old nag. Popular opinion never fails to reach you. Significant points are heeded. Trivialities ignored. Has it ever been your purpose to differ from the mob, yet you never follow the world's fashions? From Wang Anshi's 7-syllable Juju on nature themes. Okay. Yeah, so that's an interesting thing. I'll check that out one day anyway. So Wang Anshi was a humble man, considerate and compassionate in his behavior towards the poor. But he was determined to destroy monopolies and replace them with several suppliers, taxing the rich, improve the output of farms to low interest loans, and to create a more fair and stronger economy, which he did. And since he used investment credit creation in the Northern Song, when he was Chancellor and Prime Minister, he produced the world's first industrial economy in the 11th century. It'd be more accurate to say this is the first proto-industrial economy, right? So this is the significance of what he did. The same understanding is responsible for the high investment and rapid growth of the Chinese economy from 1975 to the present day. The economic understandings, which I christened as the Shimmerin macroeconomics of the Tokyo Consensus Zone, have a long parentage. And a more full name for the many sources of these economic insights might be that there. Yeah, I'm not gonna read that whole thing out. But yeah, so a few links there you can check out on in your own time. Highly recommend watching the Princess of Yen documentary. Uh, so here we have an interesting thing. I don't think it's just Western economists that are like this, but they're often puzzled by how such massive capital expenditures on social facilities in the southern Song Empire on the Zheng great fleets could be implemented without causing inflation and social unrest. Well, I see a lot of this in Western discourse. Basically, yeah, but how can it be funded? Like, especially in America, they always ask, like, but how can this, like, when it comes to welfare policies, but how can this and that be funded? Um, it can easily be funded. So the comments made by some sources that Zhenghi's 7 great fleets were constructed and fitted out and manned with no deleterious effects on the Chinese economy of the Great Ming Dynasty can only be understood from the mindset of full appreciation of the use of Wang and Shi's no-cost creation by the post-Mongol Ming Empire in order to fund the construction and operation of these great fleets. And it now seems nearly certain that the world's first great industrial revolution in the Empire of the Southern Song was financed and grew to greatness through the same government technique of targeted investment credit creation, funding the commercial development of small and medium-sized industry that is currently the source of much of the rapid growth of modern-day China. If the Chinese Empire of the Southern Song had not been divided, if the Jurchen Jin had not detached the northern provinces of China from the Southern Song, a unified Chinese empire using gunpowder technology could have defeated the Mongols, with incalculable consequences for the alternative history of the world. So yeah, that would have been interesting to see. Definitely, I think if I would go back in time, I would have probably told them that this was the way to go, and yeah, butterfly effect I no longer exist. There would have been no Yuan dynasty, no Mongol domination of illiterate China by the militarily great but culturally defective and comparatively illiterate Yuan dynasty of Kublai Khan. No Silk Road, no stimulation of the European Renaissance to the export of the four great Chinese inventions and all that. The later Ming emperors had not been so afraid of another Mongol invasion, they would not have diverted China's energies into the repair and extension of the Great Wall. The conservatives and their usual promotion of the interests of the rich and their traditional xenophobic philosophy of fear of outsiders and the elevation of tradition above innovation and isolation above development dominated the actions of the late 15th century Ming court, as they later record under the heading the faithful decision. So he talks about what the Ming court goes, what happened in the Ming court back then. You can pause the video and read it. Link to Enoch, Politics and Wasteful Policies, The Voyages Were Over. By the century's end, ships could not be built with more than 2 masts, and in 1525 the government ordered the destruction of 4 ocean-going ships. The greatest navy in history, which once had 3,500 ships. The US Navy today has only 324, was gone. That's what investment credit creation was capable of doing in a pre-industrial era. So imagine what it can do in an industrial era. And we are seeing a glimpse of that with China today. So yeah, and China's only beginning, right? It's only beginning. The Great Zheng fleets could have formed the foundation of the Sea Silk Road, covering almost precisely the same road roads of the modern Obo development. China had the option of becoming the world-leading hegemony based on its industrial strength and high levels of wealth and welfare of its people, suddenly based on the towering levels of invention and innovation in its people. The dominance of Chinese conservatives resulted in the destruction of the Great Navy and Chinese decline. Just as the dominance of the 1980s conservative agenda of Reagan and Thatcher and the promotion of the interests of the rich above the majority of the people, along with the continued destruction from 1880 onwards of the local banking system, which created the economic miracles of the Scottish and English industrial revolutions, and FDR's 1938 to 44 economic miracle, generated the economic decline of the West. So the turning inward of the Ming Empire under the Chinese conservatives ended the potential Chinese domination of the world economy and its retreat into isolationism. Um, so yeah, check out this answer here as well. It's a pretty good one. If the Chinese had kept turning outward, China could have remained the paramount world-connected culture exceeding all others. But the dominance of the conservatives turned Chinese policies inward into Sinn Fein, isolationist culture of we don't need anything outside of China. This kind of policy has never worked anywhere, as the Huang Nim has argued. So that's another Quora. His answers are really good. So do check them out if you could. At present, the very rich Chinese outside China, their foreign billionaires, appear to be trying to convert the government of China into a country that serves the interests of the Chinese rich, just like what happened in the rest of the world. In the Western Washington consensus zone is that well-funded attempt to change. So yeah, you know what they're doing. You don't really need to go through that. Wang Anshi was the first investment credit creation economist. He not only produced through no-cross credit creation, the world's first industrial revolution in the southern Song Empire, but also after the fall of the Mongol Empire, which fell partly due to untargeted credit creation, which caused inflation, and after the Mongols were ejected. Wang Anshi's insights during the succeeding Ming dynasty funded the Great Fleet. So here, here we have a look at what Zheng He's ships were like, and they are incredible. The outstanding aspect of the design of the Zheng He fleet was the raised fore and aft decks. That design made the ships more stable as ocean-going vessels. So that's pretty incredible. I think we've all seen a ship like this. So the small ship in the above drawing appears to be one of Columbus's ships, the Santa Maria, drawn to scale for comparison purposes. According to Wikipedia, the Santa Maria was 62 feet long and had a keel length of 41 feet. But Encyclopedia Britannica states that ship was 117 feet long. No matter whatever source is correct, the flagship of the Columbus voyages was much smaller than the largest Chinese treasure fleets, which were 440 feet long. So we got a sample of that here. Yeah, they're truly massive for their time. So I won't go through all that. So you can pause the video here and like read through all that. The Great Fleet had 7 voyages, of which 2 are voyages of discovery and 2 for revisiting. The leaders and ambassadors were so impressed by these fleets that they often visited China by joining the fleet and some subsequent voyages. And some subsequent voyages had the objective of returning heads of state and ambassadors to their home countries. So these were mostly from other Asian countries. So look at this table here. In the second one, it went to the court of Calicut to attend a new king inauguration. So if you don't know where Calicut is, it's in India. It's actually Kerala. It's in Kerala. So saying he went to visit the inauguration of the Kerala king. Maybe the Kerala king visited China, perhaps, I don't know. And it appears here he also revisited in the fourth one day. And he returned 17 heads of state, and this was 1417 to 19, so 2 years. Returning 19 ambassadors, sorry, and revisiting again. Don't know where exactly he was revisiting. I guess like it's just all the countries or something. Obviously, it was like Asian countries mainly because the distances were just anywhere else. The distances were just massive, and Asia was already interconnected. So there's a lot of trade and cultural exchange between Asian countries back then. Like way before then, but yeah, it was already well developed by that point. So here we got the ships by Columbus, inspired by his fleet, I guess. So you guys can check that out. That's not the point of this video. Pause the video if you wanna read that. So here is so here we're finishing a 33-minute long video. Wow, so far. The great significance of Wang and Shi's invention of investment creation economics. So it was, and is the way forward for mankind. Enabling the first industrialization in the Song Empire. Sorry. And the rapid rise in living standards in the 11th century China, and many similar results more recently. The same macroeconomic technology has caused all of the major economic miracles of the 20th century, from the Japanese colony of the South Manchurian Railway to the leading edge economies of the Tokyo Consensus Zone. So formerly Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, and now China. The partial use of investment economics by the countries of India, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand indicates that this economic innovation is unlikely to be confined to the Tokyo Consensus Zone. So this is pointed out by Richard Werner, but these aforementioned countries also experimented with some sort of credit creation. And in my country's case, which is India, I would say it was to fund ISRO, which is the space agency of our country, it was to fund its development. So that's why ISRO is somewhat advanced for a country at our development level. And Singapore is actually a full investment credit creation economy, so that should be included in the Tokyo Consensus Zone. There's a direct link between high economic growth and the use of investment credit economics and this subsequent adoption of an independent central bank and much lower economic growth with the stagnation in living standards. And much lower economic. Yeah, okay. That's too large a topic to cover here, but is amply illustrated in the countries of Japan and South Korea, and a piece relevant to the economic histories of 4 out of the 5 nations where investment credit creation has never been fully implemented. It has been continuously implemented in Singapore. The raised fore and aft decks on the Zheng ships. This was a key innovation which created the massive superiority of the Chinese Navy in the 11th century. And yeah. So, final observations. The Zheng fleets were like an entire village, Chinese village, going to sea. These ships carried large amounts of fresh water for drinking and washing and had a wide range of foods and seeds which prevented scurvy in their crews. Scurvy was escorted the European voyages of discovery. It is a pity that the Chinese understanding of the protection against scurvy did not travel along the land-based Silk Road, and the crew had wait for James Linn's discovery in the 18th century and their application in the British Navy after 1800. So that's what's required there. Decades ago, when he first visited New York, okay, called me a limey because lime juice was used in the British Navy to avoid scurvy. Alright, so it's almost 40 minutes. Okay, so I'm gonna end here. So the next, my next recording will be what is China likely to do, and we'll do next, basically. I don't know if it will be uploaded today, but it probably will. So I'll see you there.